Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the pregame lobby. I am your host, Trep. That is my co-host, Mr. Williz. And, Will, we have officially concluded Major 1 qualifiers. It is major tournament time. First major of the year, Major 1, Day 1 today. We will go over today's matches in this episode. And, of course, like Will said last episode, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, an image will go out on our predictions of how we think those matches are going to go. And, of course, those matches will count towards our overall records. You can see right here, I finished the split 23-19. Will finished 22-20. So we're neck and neck. We're right there. Only one game separates us. So it's been a nice competitive year so far. A very interesting ending to Stage 1. Which we will get to right here. So we have the major here. We have our bracket. We have our teams that we know are in winners. And like we said, we can only really go over today's matches because we want to have our picks go towards our records. And trying to predict the whole bracket kind of makes that a little bit difficult. And so today we're just going to recap the matches we saw this past weekend. And then we're going to talk about the 4 matches that are happening today, Thursday, the 29th. And then every single day after that, you can find us at the Lobby Pregame on Twitter or X, and you will see an image posted on my predictions and Will predictions for the remainder of the matches and the remainder of the tournament. So, Will, why don't we get into this, man? Why don't you take us through these matches that we had over this past weekend? We can discuss on what we saw. There were some big implication matches this past weekend in terms of seeding. I think I even said at one point that I didn't think G2 was going to be able to make winners unless, some things fell their way. And some things fell their way, and they had a big win this past weekend, which we will... was it this past weekend? No.
Yeah.
Was it this past weekend?
Yeah, they beat Koi.
That's what it was.
They shit on Koi.
Yeah. So they had some things fall their way, and they ended up making winners bracket, which is huge. So Let's get into these matches, man. Take us into the first one we saw.
Yeah, so first up, we had OpTic taking on Ravens. I think you took Ravens, and I took OpTic. Is that where we differed there?
Yes.
Or did you take OpTic?
I took Ravens,
so,
yeah.
Ravens end up winning the series 3-1. They continue to look, honestly, just great. Really good team. OpTic continue to show the same woes that we've seen when they've been playing these better teams. What did the individual maps go? I can't think of any super crazy standout maps.
Map 4 hardpoint on Den. Carolina smoked them, 250 to 133.
Yeah, they also got ran in the overload.
Yeah, 5-2.
So,
they got ran in the S&D too, 6-3.
Yeah, OpTic continuing to struggle. I don't really know what it is. It looks like the SMGs are maybe the main issue in my opinion. It looks like Merc has played pretty consistent all season long so far. Granted, all season long. We're only at one major, but it's just right now for OpTic, it seems like we're needing an AR takeover. Merc and Dash are having to play phenomenally in order for them to kind of squeak out these wins against these higher ranked teams. And they're not going to be able to do that every time. We might call him the miracle worker Mercules, but he's not going to be able to do it every time. So OpTic still got a lot to work on, and if you're Ravens, you just need to keep doing what you're doing. You look great.
Yeah, Nero with a 1.4 in this series. Absolutely went insane. The numbers for OpTic, most of them are around a 0.8, 0.9. Not a horrible series, but again, I think you just saw just an insane series from Nero. You had Lurks with a 1.3. Both those guys kind of just went crazy for Ravens in this series. So, and another series where OpTic win map 1 and then just falter the next 3 maps and don't really look like a really competitive team. So, heading into this major, you got a lot of question marks surrounding OpTic. You started the year 3-0, and then you went 1-3 in the remainder of your matches for Stage 1. So, you're in winner's bracket, thankfully, but you really got to turn it around at the major if you want any chance of winning this tournament. So a big, big win for Carolina there. Again, like you said, they continue to look great. I'm excited to see them on land.
Second match of Friday, we had Toronto taking on Paris. Honestly, I'm pretty sure we both went Paris, but it ended up becoming a lot closer than I thought it would be. Toronto came out, won the first map, and they just started kind of trading them back and forth for the rest of the series. Toronto and Paris both look decent. You know what I'm saying? Toronto just a little bit more inconsistent, I'd say, than Paris. I think Toronto has it in them to be a top roster, but I mean, we're gonna talk about literally the very next match after this. They lost to a team that I really don't think they should have lost to. And Paris, they're still squeaking out these wins. They look beatable in some of these maps and some of these game modes, but they still look good. I think if you're Paris, you just got a little bit of cleanup work to do. Make sure you're staying, consistent in the individual game modes and individual maps. But if you're Toronto going into this major, I honestly think you got a bigger issue of consistency. You know what I'm saying? Because you're playing some of these top teams close, but you're losing like bad to some of these like teams that you should not be losing bad to if you're playing the top teams close. So I don't really have too many notes. It was a very back and forth series, a pretty good series to watch, honestly. Um, that's how I'd sum it up. If you're Paris, some small stuff to clean up in the individual game modes, but if you're Koi, you got a lot of like big picture stuff to look at, I think.
Yeah, I still think Paris is the best hardpoint team in the game, closing out the qualifier. They lose one of the hardpoints in this series, but, I mean, they went on to win the map before they needed to win. Yeah, it's a scar.
Scar is very back and forth.
And Paris's S&D looks like it's gotten, better, which is a big thing for them. So it's a big win. This is a really close series in terms of KDs. I think Neptune had the best on Paris with a 1.09. And then I think, Joe Deceives 1.16 for Toronto. So, but everyone I think had 0.9s outside of that. So super close series in terms of kills. Of course, it went the distance, but Paris's S&D, 12-4 round count in favor of Paris. So, you're not gonna be able to do much if you're losing S&Ds like that. And if you're Toronto, Joe continues to do what he's been doing. You need a little bit of help from those ARs. Ghosty and Sib aren't the best AR duo you're gonna face. So if you're struggling against them, it's gonna be hard to take down an AR duo of as of right now like Exceed and Lurks, who look really really good, and OpTic, Mercules and Dash you can look good. They're a little bit of struggling, but again, a good series for Paris and Toronto. Not the way you want to end the split, especially with the match we're about to talk about. You feel like you definitely could have gone at least 1-1 to end on the weekend, and that just does not happen.
Well, I mean, let's just go straight into the next match then, because it's kind of a continuation. We had Koi taking on G2, and it was like an absolute smoke show. I think we both had Koi predicted to win pretty easily, and G2 come out and they win 3-0. Almost a 100-point win in the hard point. They win the S&D 6-2. And then they win the Overload 2-0, but it was a little bit of like there's like the strat going on right now. For anyone who isn't watching too closely, there's a strat going on right now to where like when you get up, you get the lead in Overload. You take the ball and you just go and sit in your spawn with it. Just kind of bunker down and you don't move. So the Overload was only a 2-0 because of that strategy being at play there. But it's just sloppy from Koi, man. It's sort of why I was saying like they've got some like bigger picture consistency things to look at if in comparison to like some of these other teams that they're playing. And to be honest, so does G2. You know what I'm saying? Like G2, you can come out and you can beat a team like Koi that we've been saying so far throughout these qualifiers looks great. Could be a top 4 team, but you're not beating, the other teams that are starting in losers bracket. I mean, they lost to Breach not too long ago, and Breach is starting in losers bracket. So both of these teams look a little inconsistent. I think if I'm going to like any given Sunday pick, it'll still be Koi. I think G2 just needed this win. They came out correct.
Real quick, are you sure you're not like 23-20? Because I forgot to write down my last, like the phase search.
Matches. There's 42 matches in a qualifier.
Are you sure? So I just forgot to write down. Matches. I'll look at it in a second. Yeah, this was a series I was not This is one of those ones where, like you said, we kind of expected the quick answer of Koi coming in, take the series pretty easily, and move on. Um, but you just never know with these like last weekend matches of these teams who are fighting to try to make winners bracket. And G2 was one of those teams I thought they didn't have a chance, but if you come out and beat FaZe and then beat Koi, I guess you give yourself a pretty good chance to make winners, and they do just that. Estral had a 1.47 in this series, almost a 1.5 in this series against Koi, and then Mamba had almost a 1.3 in this series. So, the young guns came out and did their thing. Everyone on Koi negative. So you would hope they would have had a bounce back series after that loss to Paris, but unfortunately that didn't happen for them. And so you're still in winners. You still get to make winners bracket, but you kind of gave yourself a little bit more of a difficult challenge in round one, which eventually we'll get to. But heck of a weekend for G2 to get themselves into winners.
All right, so let's move into the second match on Saturday. We had Riyadh taking on Cloud9. Very close series. I didn't expect that. I expected Falcons to kind of come in and give belt, if you will. But no, it ends up going the distance. Now, if you actually look down at the series and break it down map by map, the maps that Riyadh won were not close. The maps that they lost were extremely close. So to me, this speaks maybe a situation of like Cloud9 might just be pretty good at Colossus, S&D, and Den Hardpoint. I don't know. Or maybe Riyadh just got a little, little sloppy and lost a, honestly, like one. With how close these matches are, I mean, it's a 6-5 in the first S&D, and then it's a 250 to 244 in that second Hardpoint. To me, that screams like someone lost a 1v1 on a rotation somewhere, and you know what I'm saying, just went their way. But yeah, close series. If you're Cloud9, you're like looking at this maybe like, all right, hold on, like we're playing, we can maybe do this if we like clean it up. If you're Riyadh, I think you don't think anything of the series, to be honest. You're like, what are you, first, second seed, third seed, whatever? Like, you're chilling after this series.
Afro had a 0.68 in this series.
Yeah.
Not gonna do much for your team there if you're doing that. I feel like this series was closer than it should have been, but like you said, I mean, Falcons was one round in that second S&D away from 3-0ing. So, Falcons continue to really impress. Everyone positive. Celium had a 1.3 in this series. Cloud9 fall to 1-6 on the year. You're definitely going to see a roster change from C9 after the major. They've had a lot of close series, man, but close isn't going to get you anything. And I got to say, I'm very impressed with Riyadh and how they looked in stage one. I'm excited to see them in the major. They have a matchup against, the Green Wall in Dallas for round one. So that'll be very, very interesting to see what happens there. But a heck of a stage from Riyadh.
Yeah, that takes us to our last match on Saturday. We're going to have Thieves taking on the Boston Breach. I called this one going game 5. It did go game 5. Thieves, they're winning. They're winning, but it's ugly. It's ugly when they're doing it. It's like if you're Thieves, you're happy you're getting some of these wins under your belt to end up the qualifiers, but there's still a lot that you have to do. I think the biggest takeaway so far from these wins that they did get, they do have one more match on the weekend. We'll get to it. But Kenny just looks like he's playing significantly better. Still, in my opinion, seeing some woes from Hydra and Abizi, especially Hydra. Hydra really just doesn't look like he's playing like himself overall so far in the qualifiers. I think Scrap has been their most consistent player. But ultimately, what you're really going to want from this Thieves team is Kenny picking it up, and it looks like he has been.
Yeah, which is a good thing to look at if you're a Thieves fan. I just think these matches are still just too close for the amount of talent you have on this roster. It's a good thing you went 1-1 this weekend, because if you would have lost the series to Boston, that puts you in a really, really, really bad spot. But you're able to clutch up. I thought after Boston went up 2-1 after the overload, I thought they might pull it off and get the win. But Purge dropped a 0.7. Guy sucks. Get him off the team. Not a horrible stage for Boston. We were saying, you're one win away from making winners bracket. Unfortunately, you just weren't able to get it. And so, now you kind of have a pretty stacked winners bracket now. A winners bracket we probably expected to see, maybe not the seeding we expected, but probably the teams we expected to see for the most part. Another rough loss for Boston, another Game 5 loss, and that puts you in losers.
Well, that's going to take us into Sunday. We had the Paris General Mates taking on Miami Heretics to kick us off. Wasn't really a close series. Not Miami. Paris ended up winning it 3-1. They only dropped the S&D, the exposure S&D. And it's a pretty rough loss. I think it was like 6-3, 6-2 or something like that. Other than that, they looked pretty good. The first hard point was close. The first hard point was a really good hard point. If you're someone who likes to go back and kind of watch highlights, go back and watch that first hard point, that Den hard point. It was 250 to 240. It was a really fun hard point to watch. But this just kind of goes to where I was saying, like, Paris still look very good. It's small inconsistencies that I think are hurting them against some of these teams. But overall, they're still squeaking out these wins that you expect them to. On the flip side, Miami have just been really up and down. We've said it for so many teams. They've had moments where they've looked like, okay, these guys can come in and actually start winning some matches and look good. And then they have moments like this where they're just getting ran. I don't know if this is a situation of you're just playing probably the best team in the game, or maybe second best, top two team easy, in my opinion, or if there's actually something wrong with the team. If you look at the fact that they're starting in losers bracket, I'm gonna err on the side of there's probably something going on right now with the team. Still a lot of work that needs to be done on the Miami side.
Yeah, I think Miami's thing is you got to see if Trakes is that guy. Like, can he fill that hole that you got rid of when you got rid of Real? So far, I don't think it's happened. I think you're still seeing that kind of consistent play from the other three. I just feel like something's not meshing there. Something's not really connecting. But in terms of Paris, man, like I said, best hardpoint team in the game, in my opinion. If they continue that, then they're going to make a run at Major 1. I'm not going to count Miami out. I haven't looked at the full bracket, so I don't even know who they'd play in terms of what matches. But, if you're Miami, you're going to have to start winning some of these respawns. It's cool to see you win searches, but your respawns are way too inconsistent. I think you just have a little bit too much talent on that team, especially too much talent that you retained from the previous year, where at the end of the year you were having a really good run, to now, you're kind of struggling. But unfortunately, Miami, with that series loss, do get put into losers, and so we're just going to have to see how they fare at the tournament. We already know how Paris is going to do, but the question mark around Miami still remains.
Well, that leads us into our second match on Sunday, and in my opinion, the best match of the weekend. We had Thieves taking on the Carolina Royal Ravens. I think we differed here as well. You took Thieves, I took Ravens. Ravens ended up getting it in a 3-2 fashion, but it was a grueler of a series. When the first two maps went through, I thought Ravens were going to smoke show them. Ravens ended up winning the Blackheart almost by 100 points. They win 6-4 on the Raid S&D. And then we get to the Overload Scar, and Thieves gave them the hands. Thieves ended up winning that Overload Scar 7-0. They almost hit the absolute score limit and ended the match through score. And then we went to the second hard point, and Thieves almost 100-point clubbed them. They beat them 250 to 116, which brought us to a Game 5. And it went to a Game 5, round 11, as far as it can go. And Ravens just end up squeaking it out. Remember Kenny had 11 or 12 kills in that last S&D. He was playing his heart out. It was a really fun series to watch. A little disappointing if you're a Thieves fan. I always say that one of the things that disappoints me the most is when a team puts in all that work to almost force a reverse sweep and then they just lose that Game 5. It's like, what'd you do all that for then? But if you're Thieves, I don't think you're heartbroken by this. And it didn't look like they were. If you go back and watch the CDL broadcast after they lost that round 11, every single one of them were laughing. I don't really know if what that was about. But I stand by what I said. I don't think you're heartbroken if you're Thieves over this match. You're still in winners. I think I think you know that this Ravens team is just hot, and you almost took them you did take them to distance, but you almost reverse swept them. It's not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of positives here for Thieves. If you're Ravens, still positives. You don't look as like crazy strong as you did, especially since you're like almost getting reverse swept by a Thieves team that has struggled so far. But I'm still not worried about this Ravens roster. I still think they're probably my underdog pick for this major.
Yeah, I chose Thieves in this series, and this kind of series right here is exactly why. You know, I kind of felt like Thieves were going to have some resilience about them to try to win this series. I'm not shocked that it went Game 5. I'm not shocked it went round 11. You know, you saw a different kind of Thieves team in that map 3 and 4. And you know that's kind of the Thieves team you expected to see throughout all of Stage 1. But, you know, you got a hot Carolina team who's been playing really good COD. I went with my gut thinking Thieves could pull off the upset just because it was kind of a win they needed or they would want going into the major, and it almost happened, but Carolina shut down, you know, at the last minute. They closed the door on them, and so what's amazing is that they close the door on them and they play each other again round 1 of the major. So we had a really close series here. You get to see it again today, and it's going to be really, really cool to see. So I'm excited to watch the rematch.
To be honest, I think after watching this, I think there's a very real world where Thieves can beat this Carolina roster.
Yeah,
I think
so.
Thieves with how they've looked in their last few matches, they're not quite to like. I agree exactly with what you said. They're not quite to where they should be when you look at their 4-man, but they're getting there. And if
Yeah.
they can keep correcting the mistakes that they're making, there's a chance that they could end up being like a real threat in these matches and at these tournaments. So if you're everyone else, you're kind of watching this roster. You're like, oh shit, hold on, but still some work to be done. You know, I think their biggest inconsistency right now, if Kenny keeps doing what he's doing, it's going to be the SMGs. Abizi has looked better. I'm still looking at Hydra, but I said it last episode. I think it was last episode, if not last episode, the episode before. I put Hydra in the same boat that I put Shotzi, in the way that they need time to really get into their true self. Shotzi always starts slow, and I think Hydra is pretty similar in that way. Once we get to like the middle point of the season, I think we'll see Shotzi and Hydra kind of go back to their normal selves.
I agree.
Well, let's get to the last match of the qualifier.
The biggest fucking snooze fest to end the qualifier ever.
Yeah, we had Vancouver Surge taking on FaZe. It was a 3-0, and the maps weren't close.
It was a DoorDash.
Yeah, the maps weren't close. It was a 100-point win in the hard point, or 100-point lead win in the hard point, 6-3 in the S&D and 6-2 in the overload. Surge looked terrible. They're still the worst team. There's no real notes that we need to give on this series. I'm gonna be real. Hate to be that way, but
Simp dropped to 1.5.
yeah, Simp is frying.
Simp
in my
to
opinion,
pimp.
might be the best SMG player right now.
Simp to pimp. Man, it's been going crazy. Abu's out at 1.4 in the series as well.
I think Abuza is also phenomenal.
Again, I agree with you. I think Vancouver's the worst team in the game. I'm not gonna lie. I think if you put the two 1-6 teams against each other, I think Cloud9 3-0s. So
Probably.
I think that just shows how bad Vancouver is. But let's get into today's matches, today's predictions. It's CDL Major 1, Day 1. And we have 4 matches to predict for all of you. Again, just to reiterate, we're going to predict these 4 matches right here on the Pregame Lobby Show. And then throughout the weekend, Will's going to throw up some tweets with some images on our picks for the remaining matches or for the matches that day. So, Will, let's get into this, man. We got some rematches in round 1. Some that we've seen recently, some that we haven't seen in a little while. But let's get into it. Paris taking on Koi yet again in round 1 of the major. We just saw this matchup. We just saw Paris take it 3-2 over Koi. I imagine it's probably going to be another close series. Again, I think Paris is the best HP team in the game. Last time we saw them on land, they were disgusting. I'm going to go Paris 3-2 over Koi.
I'm also taking Paris 3-2. I think this is quickly becoming one of my favorite matchups to watch. especially when that Koi team is coming with the intensity that they've shown that they can. They just aren't doing it every time. Um, yeah, I think it goes the distance. I think if any team's gonna push Paris to the distance right now, it Koi's capable of doing it. I think it's like Falcons, Ravens, maybe the
Yeah.
only teams that I really see pushing Paris like far. But I'm not counting Koi out, so I'm gonna take it 3-2 as well.
Second match of the day, Ravens taking on Thieves. Like I said, another rematch that we just saw. We saw Ravens take down Thieves 3-2. You got a hot Ravens team, man, and first time we see both these teams play each other on LAN. Last time we saw Thieves, didn't go great when it came to LAN. We haven't seen this Ravens team yet. I'm going off of my gut. I'm going off of what I've seen recently. I got Ravens 3-2.
I also have Ravens 3-2. Do I think it's completely possible for this Thieves team to get on LAN and it's like something clicks? 100%. They've got a ton of experience versus a Ravens team that does not have a ton of experience on LAN. So there's a world, but I'm not counting this Ravens team out, man. Like I said, they're my underdog. I think I'm probably gonna have them go a lot further than people would expect this weekend.
Yeah. Match number 3 of the day, Riyadh Falcons taking on OpTic Texas. This was the first match we saw of the CDL. OpTic ended up taking that series, I think 3-1 or 3-0, one of the two. You get a little rematch here. Kind of a little separate story between these two teams. Riyadh's been on the rise, OpTic's been on the fall. Being an OpTic boy, man, it's tough to pick OpTic right now. They're not looking good. They're looking like they're struggling. It's first major of the year. You would hope they'd come out with a little bit of home crowd advantage. Excited to play on LAN. I don't think it's going to do enough for them right now. I just think Riyadh's a little bit too far ahead of them. I think OpTic needs more reps. I got Riyadh 3-1.
I'm actually taking OpTic 3-2. OpTic have just shown to be pretty decent at their home majors. You know what I'm saying? They get that like crowd behind. Granted, it's almost always an OpTic crowd when they're playing, but it's like a whole different force at an OpTic major. They come out with the drums and shit. I'm gonna take OpTic 3-2. I think if there's any moment that they're gonna like bring it together and actually start playing how they should be, it's gonna be on LAN.
And then our final match of the day, FaZe versus G2. We just saw this matchup. We saw G2 take it in a pretty convincing 3-1 over FaZe. So it's interesting to see all these rematches we're getting here, especially some matches we saw that were super duper close. And it's cool to see this, and I'm interested to see how this match plays out. Me personally, I love that G2 has fought their way to winner's bracket, but I don't think they're going to stay in winner's bracket long. I think FaZe is just going to be a little bit too strong. I like FaZe on LAN over G2 on LAN. Now, I think if you have any chance for Skies to play better, it's going to be on LAN. But I like the FaZe guys on LAN. I like how they are. I got FaZe 3-2.
I also have FaZe 3-2. Strictly, in my opinion, if I was being completely honest, I would pick FaZe like 3-1, 3-0. I think FaZe should run G2, but the fact that they did lose to them in the past, you never count it out. G2 fought hard to get here, so I'm gonna at least give them the benefit of the doubt and say they take it the distance. But I am picking FaZe at the end of the day.
Yeah, so the only match we differ is Riyadh and OpTic. Will chooses OpTic. I choose Riyadh. Just don't have a lot of faith in the OpTic boys right now. But it's understandable. They've had a little bit of a decline, and Riyadh's been looking good, but you just never know what happens on LAN, man. We talk about LAN all the time, and what OpTic team will you see? Will you see a team that can come out and do what we know they can do? It's possible, but you just never know. But I am excited. I'm excited to see Riyadh on LAN. I'm excited to see Falcons on LAN. Teams that Ravens, on LAN teams that have been playing really well in the qualifiers. I'm excited to see how they do, how they stack up on the moment. Again, we will predict the remainder of the matches on our pregame lobby X/Twitter account at the lobby pregame. We'll be posting our predictions for whatever the matches are tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. And then, of course, all of those predictions will go into our records. So, as of right now, in terms of how the records look, I lead by 1 over Will. We had a really close stage 1. This is what you do. This is what you were hoping for this year, because the past 2 years, I kind of was just like fumbling some picks, and we'd hit the end of a stage, and Will would be up by 3 games, and then I would just never be able to catch up. So, we're right here neck and neck. One game separates us, and we have a fun tournament ahead of us, Will. I'm excited to see what happens here. We got some underdogs here. If you had to pick an underdog that you think makes a deep run, not necessarily wins the tournament, but makes a deep run, who you going with?
I mean, I think it has to be Ravens if we're just looking at everything that's happened recently. I think that's the easy pick though. If I'm like maybe like reach deep within and like pull like who like dream pick, maybe Koi. I think Koi at this point with how they've looked their last few matches might be a little bit of an underdog pick to win this. I think there's teams that look way better than them. And to be honest, with how good Ravens have looked, I don't even know if you can say that they're an underdog pick. You're saying they're beating big name teams. But just purely the fact that it is the Ravens team, like Carolina Royal Ravens, they've got no success under their like entire history as a team. I think Ravens is like the clear underdog pick for this tournament.
I think my underdog pick's going to be G2. You just beat FaZe. If you can come out and win round 1 against FaZe again, you put yourself in a prime spot. You would be playing the winner of OpTic and Falcons. So, which of course, further you get the tournament, the harder the matches are going to be. But, if you can come out and beat FaZe, I think you can make a run here, man. And so I think my underdog pick's going to be G2. I don't think they beat FaZe, but if they do, it really makes things interesting. So I'm going to go G2 with my underdog pick. That is it for us today, ladies and gentlemen. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you keep coming back every week, every Friday, usually when we have our qualifier matches. But when the majors roll around, we do it on Thursdays because that's when the majors start. So without further ado, everyone, enjoy the major. Let us know your predictions in the comments below. Who do you think's winning the whole thing? Who's got the first tournament of the year in the bag? Let us know below. I'm Trep. That's Will. We'll see you guys next week to recap the tournament. Will, send us out of here.